Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. I am wishing you all a fantastic Friday, and I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. Today, we are going to be talking about Cardano, and we are going to be looking at a recent video from Charles Hoskinson that talks about the important nature of what is going on here with not just Cardano, but really, I think, the entire blockchain distributed ledger technology space. So we've got a number of clips from his recent video that I want to play for you guys. And this really, I think, ties in with some of the reasons why we like Cardano. You know, I ultimately see Cardano as the progress of Bitcoin. I see it as the extension of what Bitcoin was trying to do with distributed ledger technology. We saw Bitcoin come in and introduce a new paradigm where we saw this idea of being able to apply distributed ledger technology to money so that we could come up with our own systems of money and remove centralization from central banks, which we know are corrupt and ultimately controlled by a very small number of people. But the applications of distributed ledger technology does not stop there. And it was actually Hal Finney himself who said Bitcoin is a global database and there are many applications for a global database. And we're going to be talking about that in this video, and of course looking at the clips from Charles Hoskinson's recent video. Because if you truly understand the world that we are moving towards, right now we are on course for techno-feudalism. Which essentially means that the world that we are moving towards is going to be a completely digitalized one, and that is going to be owned by likely 3 companies and 3 or 4 individuals that will essentially have rulership over the masses. And I'm talking about Jeff Bezos and people like that. We are moving towards an entirely digital age. And I think one of the biggest opportunities in the crypto space from an investment point of view, and actually from a social point of view, is the distribution of compute, the distribution of cloud capital, and this kind of stuff, which Cardano, of course, is working on. Blockchain is far more than Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin maximalists are the most confused people in the room. I agree with them on Bitcoin being the superior crypto store of value. I don't think there is a competitor, you know. However, I think where Bitcoin maxis go wrong is ultimately they fail to understand that this technology has far broader applications, and they fail to see those applications because they're so hell-bent on Bitcoin. So this video is going to be a really interesting one. We're going to be, first of all, looking at his opening statement in regards to Bitcoin and really what that's spurred on, and the fact that it really doesn't stop there. And what Cardano is trying to do is absolutely of the utmost importance in regards to the future and how we actually want the future to be. Do we want the future? Do we want to live in this techno-feudalism? Do we want to live in a world where actually we have a say and our voice is heard? Right now, and most people don't believe this, and it's only going to get worse and worse, the digital world is basically controlled by a very small number of people that have an absolute say over things. And just like back in feudalism with the kings and queens charging rent on everything, it's the exact same thing with what the likes of Amazon and others are doing. And we're going to be exploring this whole concept of techno-feudalism, why blockchain is so important, AI, all this kind of stuff in the coming months and weeks. So strap yourselves in, guys. Let's get into clip number 1 of Charles Hoskinson talking about Bitcoin, and then we'll talk about how all this relates to Cardano and what Cardano is trying to do.
This whole century. And it's also a time of great unrest. Institutions are falling apart. Everywhere you look, everybody's unhappy about something. They just can't agree about what that something is, but they know deep down inside they're getting screwed somewhere. And a lot of people have been propagandized. There's a lot of hate, a lot of anger, but there's a lot of good stuff too. A lot of positivity, a lot of people that are done and they really want the world to be a better place, and they're trying to find a way to make it happen. So in 2009, January 3rd, Bitcoin turned on. It's a pretty amazing thing. The very first block, the network starts. It took a little while for things to get spinning up, but now look at where we are at 15 years later. There's a global movement of probably more than 100 million people in just 15 years. If that was a religion, people would be concerned that it would displace Christianity in a decade or two at that rate of growth. More than 100 million people in 15 years that believe we should be our own bank, that believe we should be in control of our money, our assets, our identity. and we should be able to check things, the concepts of inclusive accountability. Now, Bitcoin's not the end-all be-all, and if you look at it from a perspective that it has to run the revolution itself, it can't do that. As a foundation upon which conceptually to stand upon to show that you can have decentralized gold, you can have institutions and services be taken from the government and put into the commons and run in a transnational basis, it's the single biggest innovation mankind has seen since the invention of the corporation.
So Charles Hoskinson is absolutely right. Bitcoin is not scalable to run the revolution, and Bitcoin's been nothing short of a success and is unbelievably significant to this entire space and this entire technological revolution. You know, the point that he raises there in regards to 100 million people, if this was a religion, people would be rather concerned, I think. So Bitcoin has been a huge success, blockchain has been a huge success, and we are only on the start. We're only on the starting line of actually applying distributed ledger technology to a broader use case and to actually really take the power from a very small number of people and sort of distribute it. It's never going to be perfect, by the way, guys. Nirvana is not for this world. To a broader audience, a larger percentage of the masses, rather than in the case of, you know, the sort of cloud lords that reign over us. Let's now move on to him talking about Cardano specifically, where that's at. And then he also touches on what we've been really trying to talk about this year, which is how actually you can decentralize the very infrastructure that runs these systems. There is a problem, I have to be totally honest, in regards to right now, is Cardano decentralized? The answer, I think, by most measures is yes. But there is an issue with how Cardano is decentralized. And that is, if you look at, and I run a stake pool, ALLIN is a ticker, how stake pools, where they get their compute from, it's Amazon. I think something like 25% of the entire Cardano blockchain runs on Amazon Web Services. It's even worse for Ethereum. We need to decentralize this, and we're actually seeing those options come to the forefront. Cardano specifically, we look at loads of projects, talk about lots of them in our Patreon, but Cardano specifically has the likes of Argon, NewNet for decentralized computing. This stuff is also important in regards to the world that we're moving towards. Let's dive into clip number 2 of Charles Hoskinson, and then I think we've got a third clip, and then I'm going to love and leave you to your Fridays.
When we looked at Cardano, for example, I got a little device here. This is a B-Link GDR. It's a mini computer, nothing particularly special about it. It's got a Ryzen processor in it and nice graphics card. I put 64 gigs of RAM, they're SODIMMs, and 2 terabyte hard drive. This costs less than $1,000. This right here is powerful enough to run a Cardano network, actually overpowered for our entire network. And this goes down in cost every year. Imagine that. We've democratized the ability to run a global institution that can be the backbone of all the assets, the identity, and voting systems of the future for governments, people, corporations, everything in between. We live in a time of enormous innovation. We live in a time where everybody actually has an opportunity to have a say and participate. This is the year where the governance of Cardano will likely turn on, for better or for worse, and it likely will be SIP 1694. We'll see. Stake pool operators have a lot to say there. But in that decision, should it go through, thousands of people who have never met each other will now serve in kind of a digital Congress across the world, hundreds of places, more than 100 nations, making big decisions, making small decisions, talking about the philosophy, talking about the direction, the pursuit, and unlocking more than $1 billion of assets that are sitting in our treasury, and deciding what the budget ought to be and where to deploy them, who to deploy them to, and how to get things done. Intersect is already operational, more than 1,000 members. Intersect's growing by leaps and bounds. The GitHub repos have been transferred over. They control now the product backlog and the code of Cardano as a giant open source project inspired by things like the Apache Foundation, Linux Foundation, and best practices from 30 years of open source principles. Combine that with a blockchain-based government, and you have an open source project like no other, one where you work for the protocol, not a person, and you can legitimize the changes and decisions through a democratic process that is the most secure possible. Now, we have a long road to go. There's a lot to do, and we still fight for the hard problems. If you look at the Ethereum roadmap, for example, it's a good roadmap, but what it's doing is pushing the complexity and all of the elegance of solving things to the layer 2 at the end of the day. they've kind of given up on layer one sharding and scaling because it's hard, especially with the design decisions they've made. We haven't.
So I think the kind of need for perhaps Cardano or certainly a decentralized system, and this is why we honestly like Cardano so much, because we think actually, when you look at it on a deeper level, like what we're trying to do in this video, it is fundamental and of the utmost importance to humanity that we adopt these decentralized systems, because if we don't, we will end up with techno-feudalism. I am sure of that. That's definitely the projection we're on right now. And I really do hope that this succeeds. And then, of course, this is a deeper level. When we look at price and things like this, it kind of blurs things a little bit. I don't think price is necessarily that generated on technology. However, it will become more and more important as this space matures. We ultimately do think we are now in a bull market as well. So we think Cardano is going to do very well from that side of view. But this isn't a video about all that. We could do plenty of videos of that in the coming months. This is really a video about sort of understanding why this is all so important, why Cardano is important. Because whether it's Cardano or another blockchain that ultimately wins out and sees mass adoption, and we only really need one killer application on any chain to see mass adoption, just like with the internet. There is a fight right now that most people are not even aware of, and that is for your digital freedom. And distributed ledger technology can provide that. I do truly believe it is, and this is a righteous fight for myself that I'm very much on. This is as much a social thing as an investment thing and everything else. Let's finish the video off now with him talking about this idea of like decentralized infrastructure, which I think is going to be the big trend. DePIN, it's often being called, in the crypto world that we're moving towards. I think most people haven't even caught up on this yet, but ultimately the sort of decentralization of cloud computing, data storage is really where I'm very interested. And certainly AI. I don't know if we can decentralize algorithms that Google and stuff like that own. I think that's too far gone. But we could perhaps create our own. Do we even want to create our own? Because they ultimately manipulate you. That's for another video. Let's dive into the last clip, and then I'm going to love and leave you to your Fridays.
You look at input endorsers, it directly tackles one of the biggest problems of how to scale, especially when combined with technologies like Mithril and extended UTXO. These are inevitabilities. They aren't, can we do it? Is it possible? Should we do it? It will get done one way or the other. And with Minotaur, you talk about multi-resource consensus. You can incentivize storage, network, and computing in addition to the security of the system, which means you can invent future variants of Ouroboros that give decentralized resources to basically provide a hosting layer, a service layer for all of the things you need to fully embrace Web3 and not have a single central actor in charge of anything.
Oh, it's a very exciting future. I think nothing short of exciting and interesting, I think, is the right word that we are moving towards. I am certainly championing the role of distributed ledger technology in all this, and potentially Cardano. Cardano doesn't have to be the winner in all this, but I think it's in very good. I think it's got the social sort of network behind it, and I think the technology, as Charles Hoskin just said, then is in or on the road to being inevitable. Whether it gets adopted or not is for you guys ultimately to decide, and that's really what this is all about. Do people want decentralized systems, or are they happy with the ones that we currently have? Where we see the likes of Jeff Bezos basically owning hosting and other such things as this. So that's really all I've got for you guys. If you've enjoyed this content, a like is appreciated, so is a comment. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and be sure to become a subscriber so you stay up to date with everything that we drop on this channel, because we drop videos daily. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next one.